For 35 years, General Porfirio Diaz ruled Mexico. His regime rapidly expanded the country's railroad networks and attracted heavy foreign investment, industrializing the nation under an iron fist of strict authoritarian control. But that modernization carried a massive human cost. By 1910, less than 1% of Mexican families controlled roughly 85% of the country's arable land, leaving millions of indigenous farmers and rural laborers in a state of extreme poverty. Enter Francisco Madero. As a member of the wealthy, educated elite, he challenged Diaz by calling for a democratic transition of power. Madero wanted fair elections and a strict limit on presidential terms. He did not want a social upheaval. The people who actually answered Madero's call to arms, however, had entirely different motives. The rural peons, indigenous farmers, and the female fighters known as adelitas were fighting to reclaim stolen farmland and secure basic survival. The elite leaders at the top wanted a new president. The peasant armies doing the fighting wanted an entirely new society. The alliance against Diaz was fractured from the exact moment it formed. Madero easily wins the presidency in 1911. Once in office, he immediately demands that the peasant armies drop their rifles and wait patiently for gradual legal reforms. Emiliano Zapata, leading the agrarian movement in the South, refuses. He views Madero's political compromises as a direct betrayal of the rural farmers who put him in power. Zapata responds by issuing the Plan de Ayala. This ideological manifesto declares that the stolen ancestral lands, held by wealthy hacienda owners, must be immediately returned to the people, using extreme armed force if necessary. Ousting the dictator only exposed the true conflict. Mexico was now fighting a war to determine if the ultimate goal was holding a democratic election or physically redistributing the country's wealth. In February 1913, the old regime strikes back. 10 days of artillery fire in the capital, known as the Decena Trágica, ends in a military coup. Madero is assassinated by his own general, Victoriano Huerta, who installs himself as dictator. By bringing back the iron fist, he accidentally achieves what Madero couldn't, uniting the fractured rebel groups into a massive nationwide coalition with the single goal of destroying him. On one side of this new alliance is Venustiano Carranza. He acts as the avatar for middle-class professionals and politicians, fighting strictly to restore constitutional order and the rule of law. On the other side is Pancho Villa. He commands the Division of the North, a massive army of cowboys, miners, and laborers fighting for direct wealth redistribution and localized control. They march together and crush Huerta's forces. But this is purely a marriage of convenience, masking the irreconcilable differences between Carranza's strict legalism and the populist demands of Villa and Zapata. Huerta is defeated and flees into exile in 1914. The victorious rebel leaders meet at the Convention of Aguascalientes to share power, and the talks immediately collapse. Carranza names himself the first chief of the revolution, demanding top-down political obedience. Villa and Zapata completely reject him, insisting on their bottom-up social reforms. The former allies turn their guns on each other. The conflict descends into a brutal, multi-factional guerrilla war that pushes the death toll to over 1 million people. The class divisions become incredibly complex. Urban industrial workers form the Casa del Obrero Mundial, organizing red battalions that ally with the elite Carranza to shoot at the rural peasant armies of Villa and Zapata. The liberation movement fractures into a factional meat grinder. Citizens from the exact same economic class slaughter each other over entirely different visions of what Mexico should become. By 1916, Carranza's armies are winning on the battlefield, but he realizes his conventional military victories are useless as long as millions of peasants still have a reason to rebel. To pacify the country, he convenes a constitutional congress. His moderate faction realizes they have to legally codify the radical social demands of the underclass if they want to hold on to power. They draft Article 27, declaring all land and subsoil wealth belongs to the nation, adopting Zapata's agrarian goals. They also add Article 123, establishing 8-hour workdays and the right to strike, satisfying the urban workers who fought for Carranza. The 1917 Constitution acts as the ultimate synthesis. It forces the violent agrarian and labor radicalism of the last 7 years into a formal, stabilizing legal framework. This document establishes the modern Mexican state. On paper, the war is over, even though localized ambushes and fighting continue in the mountains and fields for months. But the men who started the fire do not survive it. Over the next decade, Zapata, Carranza, Villa, and Obregón are all assassinated by their political rivals. The famous warlords are destroyed by the chaos they unleashed. Yet the everyday citizens of Mexico secure some of the most pioneering social and labor rights in the world. Modern Mexico's progressive foundation is not a gift benevolently granted by a visionary leader. It is extracted through 10 years of betrayal and the blood of over 1 million people.